Going, everybody? I'm Tanner Eggers. I'll be one of the first people reporting for um, ecology in the news. So today I'm going to be talking about bee die-offs in Nebraska, which are traced to pesticide-using ethanol plants. So just so some of y'all know, this is going to cover a little more than just bees and go a little further in ecology. So let's dive on in. Awesome. So just an overview and summary of the article that I covered. A company named Alt-In, which is Alternative Energy, is a recycling plant in has a recycling plant in Mead, Nebraska. And so they started using pesticide-coated grains to produce ethanol. So you kind of can't see because my face is in the way, but if you see the little sacks on the ground of this ethanol plant, that's actually where they store corn to produce it into the ethanol. So they have these massive pileups where they coat them with pesticides in order to prevent bugs from creating all these issues. So the runoffs on these farmlands and everything from rain is actually sinking into the soil and causing a lot of conservation issues. So the ethanol plant has been causing several issues. So the pesticide getting worn off into other soils or other plants or gets ingested by other animals is actually causing a lot of issues. So as you can see, birds and butterflies are getting neurologically impaired because of this. A lot of people don't know, but butterflies, birds, and bees are big animal resources for the spread of seeds and pollination. So butterflies and bees do a lot of pollination, while birds are responsible for the distribution of spread of seeds, especially in places like Nebraska. So a number of common insects in this area have actually plummeted in numbers, and a lot of white-tailed deer actually in the areas are starting to see defects as well, whether that's birth or having also neurological issues, which are starting to become a concern because this pesticide used in all places around the world, and especially in the Midwest, and so it's causing big ecological issues for the animals in these areas. So why is this important? So this is a huge ecological problem. So it's limiting biodiversity because it's killing mass numbers of insects, not just pollinators, but also, like I said, huge number of insects. So the distribution of seeds, genetic diversity, anything like that is actually being limited because of this. And it has a huge impact on the population. If you can see in the bottom, there's a coyote kind of smiling at us, but the coyote is a natural predator for the white-tailed deer in Nebraska. So not only is it impacting just the insects and the birds, but it's also impacting the other animals that depend on these animals getting impacted. So there's a lot of large-scale effects on the ecosystem. So like I said, major pollinators killed. There's a huge effect on the predators and prey of this area. So hawks, for example, are getting impacted because they can't attack the mice because they've ingested either the water runoff or have eaten some of the seeds that have this pesticide on them, and it's causing all sorts of defects. Also, one of the things is a lot of these plants are having problems because they're absorbing this runoff in their roots, which is causing bigger issues because it's getting into the ecosystem that naturally occurs, not just from the farm fields, but from these plants that are absorbing it in the natural ecosystem as well in Nebraska. So one of the topics that we're going to be covering in ecology is the top-down and bottom-up design. So just a little brief overview for that. So if we're going from bottom-up, it's basically just the idea that these smaller organisms help feed larger organisms larger and larger. But the bigger the population of the smaller organisms can actually sustain the bigger populations as well. So if there's a large population of let's say seeds or plants, and these omnivores come along, the more plants there are, the larger number they're able to sustain, and so on and so forth. But from top down, it actually is that these larger animal populations actually have an impact on helping to control, their natural predators or the populations of those below them as well. So what's kind of unique about this situation and kind of concerning is that there's not a top-down or bottom-up kind of design in some ways because, obviously the seeds are impacting these animals that depend on it, and you could look at it as a bottom-up design. But a lot of these animals from different areas of the food chain are getting impacted quite severely. So kind of my opinion on it, why I think you guys should worry about it as well. So I put government policies have a huge impact on ecology, but not because of what you think. So I put the sign, like, are GMOs good or GMOs bad? But actually, government policy has forced a lot of farmers not to be able to use GMOs due to regulation. And so instead of using GMOs, farmers are forced to use pesticides, which cause a lot of issues. And so one of the things that I like to talk about is, I spent 6 years in Nebraska going through high school and a little bit of middle school. And, a lot of people think of GMOs as these big, scary things, but in reality, GMOs aren't just the things you ingest, but, they help stop the spread of insects without having these harmful carcinogen causing or even, bug killing effects. Some of them just have bug repelling symptoms. And so looking at government policy has a big impact on ecology, actually. So I think that, we need to take a step back and see, what's the better option for these farms and for our ecosystems in Nebraska. So conversation in farmlands needs to happen. So, there needs to be a conversation about how are we affecting pollinators in these areas? How are we affecting genetic diversity, and how are we affecting, the conservation of species? Nebraska is hugely covered in these cornfields, so this conservation is super important in that conversation that needs to be had about these species and how it impacts them. If you have any questions, please let me know. And here are my cited sources. Thanks, guys.